Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia University activist being held in a Louisiana detention center, rapidly turning into a contentious debate over freedom of speech. Khalil is an outspoken pro-Palestinian activist who's taken a leadership role in the increasingly volatile campus protests. So who is this new face of campus radicalization? Well, a green card holder for starters. Laura, roll video, please, on the State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce talking about it.
Secretary Rubio said on March 6th, those who support designated terrorist organizations, including Hamas, threaten U.S. national security. And we intend to use the department's broad authority to revoke visas when information comes to light indicating a visa holder may be inadmissible or ineligible under U.S. immigration law.
Okay, Dave, the guy was born in Syria to Palestinian refugees. That's not a bad start. Anyway, Mahmoud Khalil came to the U.S. in 2022, attended Columbia, that's kind of a dream, and is set to graduate this May. So why bite the hand that feeds you?
There are activists and fanatics like Khalil don't see what they're doing as biting the hand that feeds them. They see Americans as stupid and weak for allowing them to do that. And they see that their cause, no matter how vile or venal or vicious, is justified. We make a mistake, I think, that when we judge these people by the civil behavior standards that Americans use to judge themselves, they don't fall into that category. Khalil and his ilk believe their ends justify their means, and the use of violence and anti-Semitic hostility on university campuses is justified. Notably, Columbia University, in this case, Khalil's alma mater. But among Khalil's past employers, for example, is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine. These workers in Gaza actively participated in the horrendous, murderous killing spree of Hamas on October 17, 2023. Let's not forget that. Currently he is sitting, as you say, in a Louisiana LaSalle detention center, and it's a good place for him and any other non-citizen who chooses violence as a definition of free speech.
Agreed. And that's where my question to John Clark comes in, our panelist who's a lawyer and all over smarty pants. But a green card isn't a do whatever you want in America. I mean, there are conditions. Can you explain them to us briefly?
Sure, I'll do the best I can. And I think Dave has given us an indictment of the man, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But as a lawyer, I'll say there are a lot of facts that are not, immediately aware or apparent. So the green card is an interesting middle road. If he were here on just a student visa, it would be easier to deport him. If he had gone past the green card, which the next stage is to actually become a U.S. citizen, he would have all the benefits the rest of us have. I think the question is, and by the way, so the standard then before the immigration ruling will not be the beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but the clear and convincing evidence standard. It's actually a lower standard for the government than a criminal case. The law says that as a green card holder, he is, quote, expected to support the democratic form of government of the United States. And as Dave pointed out, the allegation is that he's a Hamas sympathizer. Well, a sympathizer is one thing. And the question is, how far has he gone to support a terrorist organization? We're going to be looking at the First Amendment standards. And I noticed that just an absolute plethora of not to use that word, but endless list of liberal outcry over this. In fact, the New Republic said, the only free speech the conservatives actually care about is their own. Now, I cared about free speech as a Democrat, and now I do as a conservative. And I think it shouldn't matter. But if there's ever any hypocrisy, what the Democrats have done with free speech, from COVID to professors at Middlebury College who were assaulted, to prayer in public, to pro-life groups, to sending the FBI into Catholic charities and churches to spy on people, it's kind of ironic. But I think the standard comes down to the facts. And that's why I actually don't know all the facts. Being a sympathizer is one thing. Brandenburg versus Ohio says that the KKK can go out and say hateful things as long as they're not inciting imminent violence. And actually, that stemmed from Schenck, which was an Oliver Wendell Holmes decision in 1919, which said that whether there was a clear and present danger. So I think this is going to hinge upon what kind of evidence is adduced to show not that he spoke in favor of Palestine. That is his right, even arguably on a green card. That's where he's in a gray area. But certainly under the First Amendment, as opposed to inciting students to commit violence on campus or violence against Jewish people, and whether it was imminent or not. And that, I think, is going to be the burden will be on the government to show that by clear and convincing evidence. And if so, he goes. And if not, I think it's sending a message to other people to think twice about the boundaries of the law, because the rule of law is back. And whether or not, because there's another angle here, which is the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, which Lisa Donner talks about in her article at Liberty Nation News on this subject. And I'm not sure that also weighs into the court's decision or how applicable it will be. But I think a lot of it is going to come down to whether the facts were mere sympathizer or advocating for violence against people or property in violation of the law, even of free speech protections. That's an exception. And when you're under a green card, you're not supposed to advocate against democracy. But by definition, free speech is democracy. So I don't think that's determinative.
Right. Well, Graham, I am a big free speech advocate, but is this a denial of the First Amendment with this guy? Or are we just trying to cover all of our bases?
Well, I'm sort of going to go echoing a point that John just touched on, which is, how far has this guy gone? Because as far as I'm concerned, if he is not known to have actually committed any crime or any act of violence, and he's not known to be having in any way materially supported Hamas, then to me, this is a complete violation of his First Amendment rights. It's appalling that he had his green card stripped away. It's ridiculous that he's going to be deported. Look, I don't see the guy as a hero, abhorrent organization. And, hopefully the Israelis will finally get around to completely, wiping them off the face of the planet. So I'm in no way sympathizing with this guy's views, but I am not going to be a hypocrite about free speech. I don't like it when people say, well, free speech, but you can't say this. Well, no, actually you can. As far as I'm concerned, you can say anything you damn well please. And so I think his rights have been violated. Now, if the federal government can somehow manage to perhaps link him, perhaps through his past with UNRWA there, to maybe linking him to be actually connected to the Hamas organization, well, then that's a different matter. That's a whole different ballgame. But as far as I'm concerned, if all he's guilty of is, speaking up in kind of sympathy or support of the Palestinians and even of Hamas specifically, I think his rights are being violated. I'm all about free speech, and I'm not going to employ a double standard.
I absolutely agree. And I think we at Liberty Nation News are complete champions of that. What we don't know, I guess, is what they have that they can use. I mean, Andrew, is this Trump administration just trying to, set an example with this guy? Or is there something going on there? They have anything on him?
I think that they're setting any example is setting the example of that the Dick Cheney era or the Barack Obama era, that every non-U.S. citizen does not have full rights under the U.S. Constitution. By doing so, by claiming that all non-U.S. citizens don't have any legal rights, except for, of course, not obtaining federal office or not. What was the other one? It's so the right to vote in federal office. Aside from that, from my understanding of the Constitution, is that everyone has rights under the Bill of Rights. This is one of the reasons why the Bush administration received bipartisan support for spying on the public. I'll admit not to being a constitutional scholar, and I'll defer to our wonderful Scott Cosenza for these issues, but it should be concerning that the U.S. government is not providing due process, mirroring what happened consistently during the Obama years. Now, perhaps John Clark is going to contradict my position here, but perhaps the administration is confirming that neither party is interested in the full-blown Constitution and only interested in various aspects of it. And, I think it was Mr. Clark who mentioned it, about the progressive lawmakers only, targeting aspects of free speech when it comes to what conservatives have to say. But the right also has to be just as consistent about it. During the 2024 campaign and leading into it, conservatives were constantly hand-wringing about how, my free speech and everyone has a right to say whatever they want. But then as soon as they obtain the keys to power, now it's the exact opposite. Now, perhaps I agree with John Clark. We don't have all the facts about Mahmoud Khalil, but, regardless, the fundamentals of it is exactly what Graham was saying, that you can't be a hypocrite on free speech. You can say anything you want. I'm even going to go as far as that whole nonsense about, screaming fire in a theater. That's a private issue. That's a private sector issue. But free speech for me is you can say anything you damn well want, even if it's sympathizing with terrorist organizations like Hamas.
I think I would take issue. And I'm happy.
Please, do this. Please.
We're giving a Canadian free speech.
And the reason
The Sim town.
We don't have any out there.
He speaks for everybody but Canadians.
We don't have it up
I
there,
would
guys.
say that is because you bring up precisely the exception. And that is you cannot scream fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire. And the consequences of the trampling of people falls on you and you go to jail. And that is essentially the way I see Mahmoud Khalil in his inciting the students to take over the administration building, to destroy property. And it is a consequence of his rhetoric over the bullhorn that caused that to happen. And it is for that reason that the government has taken exception to his behavior. And the green card does not protect that behavior.
Just put back just slightly here when it comes to not screaming fire in a movie theater. On a fundamental level of free speech, that is up to the movie theater to decide that, not the government. If the movie theater,
It's a criminal action. It's still I can't murder somebody either. A movie
You can't go
theater.
down the rabbit hole of movie theater etiquette. So I'm going to go ahead and close this segment out. It was a good one. We could go on for hours, but we'd bore all you people to tears that are watching. So, Americans love the First Amendment, and above all else, want it protected, unless, of course, it's something they don't like to hear. So how Trump handles Khalil could set the tone for the next 4 years. As always, Liberty Nation News will let all of you know how this saga plays out. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel, where you can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation News does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.